Hello, everyone. I'm excited to return here and excited to introduce our next speaker, Vicky Rideout. I've been in the kids industry a long time, and it's interesting. There are these kind of signposts along the way that are helpful in trying to determine where to go and where have we been and where are the future opportunities. And while maybe some of you may not be familiar with Vicky Rideout's name, I'm going to bet that you're familiar with her research. You could, ordinarily any time someone's writing about the kids' digital space or screen time, you may have heard a stat, something like kids consuming up to 10.5 hours of media in 7.5 hours through multitasking. Or maybe you've heard about the large percentage of televisions in bedrooms of 3-year-olds. Or maybe how best do parents and children interact with a screen through co-viewing. Or chances are, anything that's out there about smartphone and tablet use for minorities, that's Vicky's work. Chances are you've seen it, you've read it. And I'm very thankful for the research work that Vicky is involved in. And I think you would be as well, enjoying to hear her presentation if you're unfamiliar with her work. If you are, well, welcome, Vicky, and thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. That was sweet. So yes, I'm Vicky Rideout. I'm a media researcher, and through my consulting firm, VJR Consulting, I do large-scale quantitative studies, national research, and basically documenting trends in the use of various different types of media by children and teens. And essentially what I do is a type of market research, but it's mostly for the nonprofit community. So my quote-unquote clients are children's advocacy groups or educators or public health groups trying to reach kids with messages through the media. And about a year ago, I conducted 3 different large-scale national studies about digital media use among young kids. And so today I'm going to share just some of the highlights from those studies that might be of interest to you. And I should say, I'm focusing on use of media in the home. So I know what's picked up from being here today that a lot of you are interested in the school market, and my data really are focusing mostly on the home. The first finding, and this is, if I could pause here for 1 second, Tanda, and say that I think this is not the correct slide presentation, if you wouldn't mind just calling up the one, the newer one that's dated on the 20th. Oh yeah, no problem. So the first finding that I was going to point out to you is that digital media are in fact being adopted among children and families at an incredibly rapid pace. And I realize that this is probably not something that's a tremendous shock or surprise to all of you, but what research like mine can do is put some actual numbers onto what we all see happening around us every day. And so, what we have found is that I've done tracking studies where I take large national samples of kids in the ages of 8 and under and their families, and we've explored the same issues every couple of years so that we can see how new media are penetrating in the home and family. And so what we've documented is really rapid change in both access to smartphones and tablets and use of smartphones and tablets among this audience. I can use the old one if you want.
No, there you go. Sorry. Grab the wrong one.
Yeah, no problem. I think that's it. There we go. And so this slide shows you that, in that 2-year period, access to smartphones in families with kids age 8 and under went from about 40% up to nearly 2/3 of families, and tablets went from just 8% all the way up to 40% of families with tablets in just a 2-year period. Now you're probably saying at this point, 2013, that's ancient history, and I feel terrible because it is. But I only do these tracking studies every 2 years, so I can't tell you whether the rate of change has continued at that same pace or if it's plateaued. Or did I see a question already?
Is this stuff going to be online somewhere?
That I would have to ask Tanda about. I don't know, but sorry, but I'm sure she will answer that question for you shortly. So access expanded tremendously. And at the same time, we found that use of digital media among kids in this age group expanded tremendously in that 2-year period as well, going from 38% of all kids in 2011 who had ever used mobile media to 72%. So it basically doubled in a 2-year period. The time that kids spent with mobile tripled in that period, but you're going to see it's a very small amount. It went from 5 minutes a day on average up to 15 minutes a day on average. And this is where the methodology of my research comes into play, because unlike a typical market research company, I'm interested in all kids. I'm not just interested in the kids who might make a good market for your product, that is, whose parents are online and they have every new digital device and they have the resources to be able to buy new products. The panels that I use for our research are representative of all children in the country. So that includes the low-income children who, and I'm very interested in what happens with them. So when you look at a slide like this, I'm looking at the average amount of use in a typical day across all kids in the United States. What factors into that 15-minute average is that there's a huge swath of kids who don't have smartphones or tablets at home. There's a lot of them who do that aren't using them yet because they just haven't adopted them yet, or they use them only for a few minutes. On the other hand, if you look just at the kids who have the devices and use them, you also see a big increase in use over that 2-year period. So that not only are more kids using mobile, but those who do use it are spending more time with it. In fact, I guess that's about a 50% increase, because it went from 45 minutes a day up by 22 minutes up to 67 minutes a day on average. So the way I interpret that is kids' engagement with mobile is deepening. They're finding more content on there that they want to spend more time with. Another thing that our research found is that as kids' use of mobile media goes up, their use of television is in fact going down, but only slightly and only slowly. So you see here on this slide the percent of kids who are daily users of mobile devices. That means, you know, I get on my phone or my tablet every day. It's something that I'm always doing. It went up by 9 percentage points. The percent of kids who are daily users of television during that 2-year period went down by 7 percentage points. So it is possible that for some kids, mobile use is replacing television in their lives. But it's really a smallish percentage of kids, and as you can see by the disparity here between the percent who are daily users of each medium, kids' passion really is still with television too. Another thing that our research shows, and that's really important to me, is that there is still a big digital divide in this country. This slide shows the difference in access, just access to new digital devices, between low and high income families, which in this particular study were defined as families earning under $25,000 a year or over $100,000 a year. And you can see there's a more than 25 percentage point difference in ownership of smartphones. It's still less than 60% of lower income families that even have a smartphone, and only about a quarter that have a tablet. It's a 50 percentage point difference in ownership of tablets. So as a result of that, as you can see in the last set of bars, there's a really big difference in the use of educational apps for kids. And this is something that I've dubbed the app gap. And what it means is that the families and kids who probably need educational apps the most are the least likely to be having access to them. And I think that's, in fact, they're half as likely. So I think that's something that as a society and as educators, we need to figure out. On the other hand, we have seen that among low-income families, access to digital devices is expanding pretty rapidly. So it is possible that that gap will close dramatically in the next few years, but we just don't know when the ceiling's going to be hit in terms of the low-income kids. So this is from a slightly different study, so the numbers are ever so slightly off because this is from the tracking study. But you can see pretty big increase in, you know, smartphone ownership almost doubling there, tablet really big change. The percent of kids who'd ever used a mobile device tripled basically in a 2-year period, and this is just among the lower income kids. So, of course, one of the key questions that we're all consumed with is not just which platforms kids have access to or are using, but what it is they're doing on those platforms. What is the content that kids are accessing? It turns out that playing educational games is one of the top activities for kids in this age group. This is kids who are ages 0 to 8. 43% of kids often or sometimes do that, and that compares pretty favorably to the percent or the frequency with which kids are playing games that are just for fun. And then another 38% who are often or sometimes using creative apps, so which is another form of learning that might not be dubbed an educational app, but certainly has a lot of educational benefit. According to a study that I did for the Joan Gantz Cooney Center at Sesame Workshop, about a third of kids are playing educational games at least once a week or more often. So it's 9% who do it daily and 26% who do it weekly. So it's a fairly substantial group of kids. It wouldn't, it would probably pale by comparison to the percent of kids who are watching educational television on a weekly basis. But kids are using educational content on mobile devices. But of course, the other important question is, what is the impact of that? What are they learning? And the type of research that I do, we have talked with parents to find out what is their experience of what their kids are learning from mobile devices as compared to educational content on computers or television and so on. And what we found in this work we did for the Cooney Center was that about half of parents say that whose children use educational content on these platforms on a regular basis say that their kids have learned a lot from the educational television and educational tools on computers, and almost 40% say the same about mobile. So I think that in a relatively short period of time, that's a pretty good substantial number of parents who feel that their children have learned a lot from the educational content that they're playing on mobile. So that seems to be a pretty positive result. Of course, there is a disparity here between how much parents think their kids have learned from mobile as compared to computers and television. There's probably a lot of possible explanations for why there is that disparity. And the most likely, to my mind, is probably just that kids have been accessing educational content on television and computers for longer than they have on mobile, so they've learned more from it. But it may be that while that kids are just choosing content that isn't as educational for them on their mobile devices, that they're spending more time playing games that their parents don't see as being truly about learning. We also asked parents whether they think that the content their kids access on mobile devices has mainly a positive or mainly a negative impact on various academic and social emotional aspects of their development. And as you can see here, parents were more likely to attribute a positive than negative impact of mobile on kids' reading and math skills and on their creativity, although not overwhelmingly more positive than negative, but more positive than negative. But they were more likely to attribute a negative impact to their kids' mobile use on their children's attention spans, social skills, and behavior. And there the balance was a lot more negative than positive. So parents do see educational benefits for kids from what they're doing on mobile devices, but not as much as they see from other platforms, and they also do see some negatives as well. So to summarize some of the key findings from this research, digital media are being adopted by children and families at home at an incredibly rapid pace. Children's engagement with mobile content does seem to be deepening. Those who use it spend more and more time with it. As digital media use goes up, TV use is going down very slightly and slowly. Low-income families are adopting digital media rapidly, but there's still a really important digital divide. Educational content is a key part of children's mobile media use, and parents do see their kids learning from media, from mobile, but less so than from other platforms, and they are seeing some negatives as well. Before I close, I just want to talk for a second about why I think any of this matters, beyond the fact, of course, that you're all in this business and your livelihoods depend on it, which is a very good reason why it matters. But one reason why I think that how digital media are developed and used in this country matters is because of the somewhat shocking fact illustrated in this slide here, that only 1/3 of children in this country in the 4th grade are proficient at reading. Only 1/3 of kids are proficient readers in the 4th grade in the United States of America. Another third can read at a basic level, and the other third are below basic in their reading skills. And I just feel that in this day and age, with all of the resources and knowledge at our fingertips, it's just a shame that we allow that to happen. And what makes it even worse is that we have an achievement gap in this country that is absolutely horrifying. So that while 46% of white children are proficient at reading by the 4th grade, which is nowhere near enough, only 18% of black kids and 20% of Hispanic kids are proficient at reading in the 4th grade. And the fact is that that gap, now that gap is really not probably about race at all and is about income, but that this is the way the government data are reported and measured in the large-scale government studies that these data come from. But that gap, 20 years ago, it was a 26 percentage point difference between kids of color and white kids, and today it's a 28 percentage point difference. In 20 years, it hasn't budged at all, with all of the new technology and tools and techniques that we have at our command. Why? Probably because that is not the most lucrative part of this business for all of you to go into, unfortunately. So the reason why all of this matters is because all of you in this room do have a chance to actually make a real difference. I know all of you here aren't necessarily in the literacy game. I probably could find similar statistics to throw up there about math or science or any other field that you would be interested in. But the point is that every time a new media technology is invented and introduced in this country, there is great excitement about the educational potential it offers for children. From the dawn of radio, to the beginnings of television, to the first computers, to the beginnings of the internet, to now the invention of smartphones and tablets. That's where most of the excitement is. This is going to be such a great educational tool for kids. They are always greeted with great excitement about that. And in many ways, those technologies really have, in fact, revolutionized educational opportunities for many children. And yet, those kids most in need remain most in need. The achievement gap between white children and children of color is the same today as it was 20 years ago. So I don't mean to imply, and it does sound like I'm implying that digital media are going to be the magic bullet that's going to single-handedly, solve the problems of poverty and disparity in children's lives and create educational equity in our country. But the technologies that all of you are working with do have unique capabilities and what we call affordances these days for teaching and learning. And I am convinced that they can make a difference. So, I just want to say to all of you, I am really grateful to you for being in the learning track at this conference today. I am really grateful to you for being in the learning aspect of this business. That's because I just feel we cannot afford to let another technology slip through our fingers without doing our best to make sure that it benefits the children who are most in need at the same time that it benefits the bottom line. That's it for me. Thank you.